It's all about sharks this week because it's Shark Awareness Day. Sharks have been around for 400 million years and are older than dinosaurs. They have multiple rows of teeth which they lose and replace all their lives, losing as much as 30,000 teeth. They can detect electric fields in water, some can regulate their own body temperature, and their skeletons are made of cartilage. But many shark species are currently facing threats to their survival, and only we humans can eliminate that threat. Welcome to our positive, daring, different show today, Kaleidoscope. Ahead on the show, the innards of green reporting, quirky puppet decor, and an exclusive with legendary JeremyIrons. Kaleidoscope is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Remember to subscribe, follow, and like us for more. A massive thank you to our brilliant partners, Celico Live, CDB, and The Daily Morning.
She wins with CDB Wings, exclusive financial solutions for women.
Looking back at the week that was on CDB Snapshot. The IMF approves the next $350 million tranche for Sri Lanka, bringing the total disbursed to $1.74 billion. Sri Lanka's 2024 GDP per capita is the second highest in South Asia in 2024. 72% of Sri Lanka's energy generation now comes from clean sources, the highest renewable energy share since the 1990s. Sri Lanka earns over $6.9 billion in exports in just 5 months of this year. Tax exemptions given via Sri Lanka Customs through the port city and the BOI amount to 120.7 billion rupees up to May this year. A 99-million-year-old amber preserving an ancient fly and a zombie fungus bursting from its head has been discovered.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Silico Life.
Welcome. This is Celico Live News Capsule. As global markets raise the bar on environmental compliance, Sri Lanka's corporate sector is feeling the heat. A new study on listed companies at the Colombo Stock Exchange reveals stark disparities in how environmental reporting is done, or in some cases, barely done at all. Researcher in the Nature, Climate and the Economy theme at the Center for a Smart Future and Erasmus Mundus scholar Medhini Igoor discusses what needs to change fast on Kaleidoscope's news capsule.
Why are corporate environmental disclosures gaining more momentum lately, and why is it important in this context?
I think the reason why it's gaining so much momentum now is because there's a general shift globally towards sustainability, and also there's a sense of climate urgency. So there's a deeper understanding of the fact that companies not only impact the environment, but there's also a lot of environmental risks that actually threaten the long-term sustainability of companies itself. So stakeholders, from investors to regulators to consumers, are demanding a lot more information now from the companies, and also demanding a lot of accountability of the companies itself. So in the last couple of years, because of this general shift, there's also been a lot of development internationally with regards to a lot of frameworks and guidelines that are coming out, but also there's a lot of mandatory regulations that are coming out. So in a lot of countries and regions, there's a shift from voluntary to mandatory reporting itself. So now this automatically impacts Sri Lanka because Sri Lanka is embedded in the global supply chain. From Jan 2025, because of all of these global developments, mandatory regulations have actually come into place even in Sri Lanka for the top public listed companies. And I think it is a bit difficult to move away from the global trends now, but also there is this urgency and understanding that there's a lot of risks involved environmental risks for the companies, which challenges its long-term sustainability.
Given your research findings, what have you found about environmental reporting among corporates in Sri Lanka?
Most companies do report to some extent, but they report on very basic metrics like energy, water, waste management. But there are very few companies that are actually that have actually adopted international frameworks specifically that are focused on environmental reporting. So examples of these frameworks are TCFD, TNFD, SBTI, a lot of acronyms, but these are basically some of the more rigorous environmental frameworks. So there are very few companies that have adopted these frameworks. But like I said, now that, from Jan 2025, because it's become mandatory for top public listed companies, it will invariably drive a lot more adoption. But having said this, again, companies are very underprepared. That came across even in our research. So these frameworks are not like, you can't do it as financial reporting, or finance teams can't do it at the end of a financial year. It requires a lot of preparation, a lot of data collection and management.
What does this say about corporate leadership and their views on sustainability?
One common theme that came across was the intrinsic motivation of the top leadership and the management to drive sustainability within the companies. But again, on the other side, there have also been conversations where, there have been sustainability teams that still push the needle and they still advocate for what needs to be done. So I think it works two ways, but definitely without top management buy-in and without them being on board, none of the strategies and operations and sustainability initiatives permeate through the other levels of the company. So it's absolutely critical that top management is on board and they, to some extent, drive this change as well.
And now for a look at how our markets fared this week. While the Colombo stock market ended June with a stellar performance, with both indices netting 7% growth, whilst the benchmark ASPI index crossed the 18,000 point mark, and by midweek continues to move further upward as investor optimism was renewed after Sri Lanka received the fourth tranche of its IMF bailout package. Crude oil prices fall slightly to between $65 and $67 per barrel due to an anticipated increase in OPEC Plus supply and the disappearance of the wartime premium after the Israel-Iran ceasefire. Gold remains at about $3,300 per ounce, supported by a weaker US dollar, even as its safe haven status becomes secondary after the ceasefire in the Middle East. Tens of thousands of Hungarians put on a stunning display of pride recently at the Hungary Pride March, which was also a protest against the Prime Minister's ban on LGBTQ+ events. He has a triple crown in acting, an Oscar, an Emmy, and a Tony. He is known for bringing gravitas and complexity to every role he undertakes, whether in The French Lieutenant's Woman, Elizabeth I, The Real Thing, Reversal of Fortune, Die Hard with a Vengeance, Lolita, Appaloosa, or as the voice of Scar in The Lion King. And now, JeremyIrons steps into yet another powerful role as former attorney and human rights lawyer Julian Miles in Rizana, A Caged Bird. Working with acclaimed Sri Lankan director Chandran Ratnam in this film produced by Jagat Sumutipala and Sumati Studios, Jeremy lends his voice and presence to a story that shook the world. JeremyIrons gave this exclusive video interview to Kaleidoscope this week to talk about justice, storytelling, and why this film resonates far beyond the screen. What compelled you to lend your voice and your presence to a story so far from home, yet so universally human?
Those are the reasons. It's so far from home. It's lovely to come to Sri Lanka. I've been here before. It's a story which needs to be told. Not only Sri Lankan men and women who work abroad with no rights, no legal rights, but also Indian and from many countries working in other countries had this problem. And I thought that's an important story to tell.
What was the experience of working with a Sri Lankan director, Sri Lankan producer in Sri Lanka about a Sri Lankan story?
Well, he's a very experienced director, very experienced man of film. And his son is editor and writer. And between the two of them, they got a wonderful script together. There is a lot of enthusiasm for the story amongst the crew and amongst everybody who's working on the film. And enthusiasm is a wonderful thing to have. And filming anywhere in the world is all, a film crew is a film crew.
You portray complex characters in morally charged stories in sometimes. How did engaging with Rizana's real-life tragedy shape your understanding of accountability, of empathy, and the power of cinema to challenge silence?
Well, I know about the power of cinema, or the story it well tells. I knew about Rizana's story. I remember it in the quest 20 years ago. And I think if we can, film can't often help change things, but sometimes it to raise the part of the process, raising people's awareness for injustice, I think is an important thing we do.
So you played everything from aristocrats to outcasts. Which role, if any, forced you to confront something deeply personal about yourself?
I suppose mission, probably, because I'm not particularly religious either. I think I'm quite spiritual, but the mission taught me a lot about myself. But in a way, it's difficult. I don't think in those terms. But, playing a part is like smoking a cigar in a room. The smell of that cigar stays with you. And the smell of the parts that you played stays inside you. So in a way, each character I played has opened me out a little more and made me a little more aware of myself.
If you could have dinner with one of the characters you played, who would that be, and what would you converse about?
I think I probably tried that kind of dinner with the Earl of Leicester, who was the lover of music at first. I made a film like that with Helen Mirren. And it'd be interesting talking to him about how he saw his life at that time. And I'm interested in history. I'm interested in how things were so different. Although I don't think we were different. I think things were so different in the past.
So you move from blockbuster cinema to very intimate stage work. How do you calibrate your craft between the spectacle and the soul of that performance?
Well, I hope there's always a soul, not just spectacle. And in my view, however much spectacle there is, if there's no soul, there's no show. Then people talk about AI and huge special effects. Yes, they're exciting for an audience, and they touch certain parts of your emotion. But the way we really touch each other is through Rizana.
Tucked away behind the sun-drenched walls of a 17th century Dutch heritage house in Golfort, Kaleidoscope came across this lovely Le Jardin du Fort and its quirky decor in the Puppets restaurant. It's a secret sanctuary where history whispers and puppets watch silently from the walls. Here, marionettes don't dance on strings. Instead, they take center stage in decor, not performance, preserving an art form that once held a powerful place in Sri Lanka's storytelling tradition. These wooden characters, hand-carved, colourfully painted and dressed in miniature traditional garb, were once the storytellers of folk legends, spiritual parables and biting social satire. But as curtain calls faded, so did the art form. Now, in this whimsical boutique space where curated dishes meet curated heritage, puppetry finds a new voice. It's playful, it's poetic, and it's deeply Sri Lankan. We are officially halfway done in 2025. Here's to a great rest of the year. We'll be back next week.